Welcome to episode 4 of ROL Radio. On this episode, we have an amazing conversation with Rudy Tapalla. After the Marine Corps, Rudy became a personal trainer and then went on to build a massively successful CrossFIt gym in Chicago. Listen as he discusses what it took to achieve such success and ultimately the toll it took on his happiness and family life. Rudy digs deep into why he believes people really seek out a personal trainer, and after almost 2 decades in the fitness game, how he now has a new definition of success. Here is episode 4 of ROL Radio with Rudy Tapalla.
Welcome to ROL Radio.
Excellent. And we are live. Gary, how are you?
I'm good. Are you sure we're live?
I don't know.
Are you sure?
I don't know. Rudy is in the house and we are doing this again. I'm taking a hit for this one. So this is a re-record, which is going to make it very, very interesting, but so is life, right? Rudy, how are you?
I am good. How are you guys?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
Thanks for doing this again.
No problem at all.
Yeah, I want everyone to realize at the beginning here, Thomas said he's taking the hit. So if you keep listening to us, this will be one of those rare occasions where you will hear Thomas admit that he may have possibly been the one maybe to have made an error. So write this down. Write down June 15th, 2020.
There's a very small chance that was my mistake, but I will take the hit for the team. It's all good. It's all good. Maybe not.
Yep.
Rudy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
How are things going on your end? I mean, it's been a few days since we did this the first time around, but how is everything going?
Good. You know, I'm actually glad that we're doing this a second time around. It gave me some time to think about things. So it's good.
Oh, so now you have more for us. That's even better.
We'll get some real details. Good.
How are you doing during this COVID-19? That's not necessarily what we want to talk about, but it's part of our life today. And how is everything going from the family perspective, from the professional perspective?
Definitely good. The kids are out of school, so that's kind of nice. But it also leaves me a little more busy. The wife is consistently busy. She's a nurse practitioner, but we're doing okay. Can't complain.
Well, that's good. And work is good, or there's no
work is good.
Yeah.
No, there's working from home, so instructing classes online. So we're making it work.
So for those of you who don't know, Rudy has been in the personal training business for a very, very long time. How long has it been since you started?
Just a little over 18 years.
18 years. So there is a substantial amount of experience and knowledge that follows you. How is today in this unique time, relate to what you used to, or what you used to do, and let's say 10 years ago, how things change? And I'm not only talking about the time, the past, but also the COVID-19 situation.
It's definitely interesting with everyone doing everything virtual. Also, with COVID and everything, we have so many different stresses. People taking care of their kids that are not used to taking care of their kids all day. People having to work from home. So outside of like normal fitness, there's a whole ton of different stresses that are going around too. So that kind of affects time management and everything as well.
Do you think personal training is as effective virtually over video when you compare it to the in-person interaction with your clients?
I think a lot of that depends. I think on your experience. The more experience you have, the more you're able to reach people. Whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. So.
And we cannot cheating here. And Gary, jump in at any time. But I take extensive notes during these conversations, and one of the things that struck me first time around, before somebody messed up, was the fact that you mentioned that you create a personal connection with each client, and you try to understand what change they are trying to make. And it's by far deeper than I want to get fit. I want to lose weight. I want to, feel better. I want to start working. You really go deep in there, and I want you to talk about this because I think a lot of people miss that boat or miss that detail.
Definitely. A lot of people think that, they state that their fitness goal is to like lose 10 pounds but usually there's like a deeper emotional meaning. When you keep on asking the question why and get down to the real root of things, it's usually something a little more emotional. So either they just want to feel better about themselves. So like a little more ego driven. And I don't mean to say that like in a negative connotation. But there's usually a deeper level, like whether they want to stay alive longer to play with their kids, or maybe they just want their spouse to appreciate them more. There's usually a deeper level, and it's once you get to that root, you could kind of move fitness forward a lot smoother.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why people stop becoming fit or let themselves go, if you want to put it that way. And that's usually, I think, a personal issue, right? It's not because nobody wants to put on 15 pounds. Nobody wants to, struggle just getting out of the chair. And I think we put ourselves in those positions for emotional and personal reasons, right? We might not know it, but I think once you start talking to somebody and working through it, you start figuring that out. And that's what really, I think, for me anyway, makes people change or want to change, right? And they might not even know that yet. They might think it's just they want to lose that 15 pounds. But I think it's great that you talk to them and figure out the deeper meaning as to the reasons why they're there to see you.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not just like in a singular sitting. Sometimes getting to that deeper root takes weeks.
Yeah, so you're more than just, a personal trainer. There's a lot of therapy that goes in. People
Unfortunately,
don't see,
so.
right? Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
So that was my next question, actually. How long does it typically take for you to go through this discovery process? Because that's essentially what it is, right? I mean, hypothetically, you've never met that person. You don't know who they are, what they do, and you definitely don't know what the true reasoning is. How long does it typically take to get to the bottom of this?
I think a lot of that depends on like personalities too. Some people are very open and very open to leaving themselves vulnerable, and so they're able to just like talk about their feelings. Some people have it rooted way deep down, and sometimes it will take months to figure out what they really want.
So
So
what
you
if they
form
quit?
a bond of trust.
So what if they
So,
quit before that? I mean, what if they want to quit before that? Like, does that become an effective way of training at that point?
um, I mean, you got to give them like you need to dangle the carrot in front of the cart. You got to give them the small goals. So yeah, if they want to lose 15 pounds, then you send them on the route to lose that first pound or two, but it doesn't stop you from getting to the deeper root of what they truly want.
So what I'm hearing here is, before we all step into good personal training sessions, or the commitment there is necessary, not only from the working out perspective and success perspective, but really for you to get to know me, to understand who I am and what I need. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the difference between being a professional and then being somebody who just pulled a workout out of a magazine. Getting down to those personal roots.
Hmm. That's so interesting. Does the same thing apply for professionals, for athletes? That I'm referring to that deeper understanding of their reasoning and the goal.
And I think for professional athletes, I think that rabbit hole goes a lot deeper. When you start playing around with psychology and management of that. So
So talk about that a little bit. Why do you think that's so much deep? Because like, in the simple words, professional, it's pretty cut and dry, isn't it? I mean, they get paid, they need to perform. You just need to get them up where they need to be. No?
uh, it's the more money, more problems thing. It's
I don't know anything about that.
The truth comes out.
It's
Oops.
like I'm sure when you're making millions that you're more stressed about. For us, you can imagine the amount of stress of underperforming. But that's your profession. So I think the more professional you are and the more successful you are, the higher that stress level is. And so the more guarded you are, the less vulnerable you want to be.
Well, there's a lot of ego too, right? When you become a professional athlete, that you don't have to, but I think you might think you need to build up those walls, right? You can't show any weakness, especially depending on the sport. But I would think that has a lot to do with it too, that people can't be as open, because then then they're leaving themselves open for people firing shots at them, right?
Yeah,
You see
I
it all the
totally
time in
agree.
the media, right? I know, as fragile as I am, my ego, I could only imagine having to protect yourself all the time, with microphones in your face all the time, people commenting on every aspect of what you do, uh, whether it's you dropped a pass, whatever, who knows? But you're gonna have people jumping all over you for it. And I mean, yeah, the stress level has got to be through the roof. And I don't think people think that. It's like most people sit at home and they're thinking, I would give anything, to be a pro basketball player or a pro football player, man. How is that guy complaining? Or how is he retiring at 33, at the top of his game or whatever? And I don't think they realize that, you're on 24/7 probably, right? You have to be all the time. And to let your guard down at that level is probably super hard. Or not.
Pause.
Did
Rudy,
I blow you guys'
you
mind,
actually,
or was that really dumb?
we
No,
were
I think that's
processing.
true. I think that's super true.
Rudy, so you had some interaction, not only, I mean, right now you focus on just non-professionals. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's my understanding at least. But you had some interaction with professionals in the past. What's the main difference between those two groups besides the money, obviously?
I think controlling emotion, so like that self-awareness of where your athlete's at and what they have to do, and controlling their emotions, the highs, the lows, and maintaining their composure throughout is super tough as a coach.
Who's more difficult to work with?
Oh, people that are competing professionally, I think are way tougher. There's so much head trash, and it goes so much deeper. I mean, they've dedicated their life, their to this craft, and so when it comes down to like a singular moment, it's pretty tough to try to mitigate that.
So how do you help as a coach from that perspective?
Different people, different things. It's funny. I've worked with two different athletes for CrossFit in the highest level, and one completely stoic, and the other one completely just continually shifting and having different things to worry about.
So interesting. That's so interesting. So you mentioned CrossFit, so let's dig into that. How all
Sure.
of this, how did this whole thing started? For those of you who don't know, Rudy used to be owner of what I heard, one of the biggest CrossFit gyms in Chicago. And so dig in, how all this started. What did it start? Because this is all started way before CrossFit, right?
So it started. So I was in the Marine Corps from '98 to 2002, and then towards the tail end, I decided to start personal training while I was going to school for elementary ed, and that's kind of where everything kind of started from.
So you're Marine Corps, you get into personal training, and how long does that journey go?
So personal training throughout going to school. So that was as soon as I got back from the Marine Corps. So from '02, start personal training for maybe like 5-6 years before I opened up the CrossFit.
So are you working at a facility? You're doing this by yourself? How is this? What does this look like?
So I was doing everything from like boot camps to training for different facilities. It's funny, actually, for a while I was training at that Fitplex where Master Carlson was teaching, which was a great experience. A missed boat for me. It's funny when
I
Master
didn't know
Carlson
you
was
were
there.
there.
Oh yeah, and he was always like, "You come train, come train," and I was like, "Oh no," and it's
What
funny.
year was this?
Oh, 05 maybe, oh 05, oh 06, roughly around there.
Thomas is
Yes,
thinking.
I'm
He-
thinking. What was I there at that time? I might have been.
Uh,
I might have been.
I don't know. I mean, Jeff Neal was like a regular there. Pete the
Yeah.
Greek,
Yeah.
Vives was still coming in and out of there
Yeah.
around then. So
I think this was, yeah, I was nobody. So, but yeah, this was, yeah, I think this was right around that time. Right around
yeah,
that
it's
time.
it's pretty much when Stefan Bonner just started to get big. So right before that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember Stefan Body. I remember helping him get ready for Ultimate Fighter. We were there. We were all, yeah. That's so interesting. I didn't know that. Look, I learned
Oh
something
yeah.
new. I learned something new. That's awesome. All right. So
Yeah.
you go through these motions and then opportunity to get into CrossFit. So talk about that a little, because I found that interesting in our first conversation. How in the world you switch from personal training to CrossFit, which is very, very different.
So in 2007, 2008, the facility that I'm working for, this gym called the Sweatshop, is starting to close down. And I have the majority of my clients there. I'm probably like the busiest coach there. And so all my clients are like, all right, so what are you going to do? And, I had no clue what I was going to do as a personal trainer. And I had all these clients and they're like, you should really just open up your own spot. And I was like, okay, that's sure. Why not? I've got all this equipment. I'm going to open up my own spot when this place closes down. So over like four or 5 months, I'm starting to accumulate stuff in the basement. So like benches, racks, weights. And so I decided that I'm going to open up my own spot, which is definitely interesting. So I opened up my own spot in 2008. And then during those months where I'm starting to save up for like equipment and everything, I find CrossFit and I started dabbling in CrossFit and finding that I really enjoy this high intensity exercise stuff. So start running classes in the morning and in the evening. And then this big thing started to explode and I started to get more and more people that wanted to participate in CrossFit. And so it's interesting.
Yeah. So why did it grow so fast?
It's funny that it actually grew so fast at that time because it was such like a grassroots movement in that time. But I think people were looking for something different. They got tired of the Bally's scene. It's funny, it dated back to people who know what Bally's is.
I used to work out Bally's. Bally's was the place to be.
Exactly. So people getting tired of Bally's and the big social scene at the gym, and so people that just wanted this rougher, tougher workout and a little like garage feel of a workout. And so I think that's what originally grew it.
Yeah, that's the same time though as social media starts blowing up too. So I bet that had a lot to do with it. A lot more exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was like one of the big things about CrossFit is they had a list of their affiliates. And so when I opened up my place, we decided to be a CrossFit affiliate. And so we applied for affiliation, got approved, and I was getting a lot of traffic. So people coming in specifically looking for CrossFit versus personal training.
So explain that, because there are some changes happening in CrossFit today as we speak, this week particularly. But what does it really mean to be affiliated of CrossFit? Can you do CrossFit without being affiliated of CrossFit? And is that called something else? Or is that not CrossFit anymore?
So the big thing with CrossFit is their affiliation is more like a licensure. So all you're doing is paying a fee yearly to use the name CrossFit, and then they also cross market your facility. So it's more like a licensure because it's not like a franchise because they don't tell you what you can and can't do. They're not going to give you business advice. They're pretty much just licensing you to use the name officially CrossFit for your high intensity functional movement.
So technically, there are other gyms who are not CrossFit, and that, I think that's what the athletes are, or the gyms are. What's happening this week, particularly, right? Some of them are leaving that umbrella of CrossFit and they're going on their own. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people are, the CEO of CrossFit. So if you guys don't know, the CEO of CrossFit made some statements on Twitter that were not received very well. Um, and so people decided to start disaffiliating or leaving the CrossFit affiliation. So
So what does that mean to them at this point? I mean, does that change the business model for them, or besides the name? I mean,
It doesn't change the business model, but like it's definitely gonna disturb the function as a whole. You know, when you start taking this big organization of CrossFit, and then now you're gonna name yourself, uh, you know, gyms functional fitness. You know, it's harder to market yourself as a place rather than what you were doing to target yourself as a CrossFit. Um, you know, it's like if so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's this big umbrella, right? You decided to say, hey, this is Thomas Jiu-Jitsu, and then you started trying to market yourself. You still have the population you have that was looking for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but then you have a smaller population that has to almost like know somebody to understand what you do. So
yeah. So the CrossFit became not only a brand, but also a functional description of the fitness.
yeah,
And by taking
definitely.
that away, now you have the new people who might not know what you are doing at the facility, right? Is that where this is going?
Yeah, and so like after, I mean, it's been probably like 15, 20 years since CrossFit started. Like you could tell somebody I do CrossFit and they understand what you're talking
Hmm.
about. If you say I do high intensity functional exercise, people are like,
Huh?
okay, well, exactly. What does that mean? You're like, oh, I do CrossFit. Oh, okay, you do that crazy stuff. You swing on bars and jump around and lift heavy weights.
Do you think that's going to impact those gyms who are no longer branding CrossFit at this point? I mean, is that gonna, you know, is this a way out in the sense of CrossFit is gonna get diluted in a way?
I think, I mean, because it's not a franchise model, it's already somewhat diluted because everyone's allowed to take CrossFit on how they want to approach it. Um, you know, so it's just like, I guess it would be like doing jujitsu without belts. So it's just like, all right, just do what you do. You could promote people however you want to promote them. And so there's no unifying cause. You know, the great thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that there's a belt system, and so you understand roughly about what a blue belt should know, or a purple belt, or a black belt, and so there's at least some kind of guidance. But just think what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would be without a belt system.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting analogy. So you get in there, you working this, and you growing this, and this turns into a quite a project, quite a, well, it's a business. It's not a hobby at this point, right?
Yes, and so so it left my personal training experience to delving into this whole group fitness thing that I mean, I had limited experience. I did some boot camps, I've done some classes, but now I'm starting to just manage these big groups of people. So it's funny, we grew from a small 1,000 square foot facility. So we're a second floor above a Mexican restaurant, which is a very interesting start if you're going to be dropping weights.
Yeah, that would be bad for me.
I
Both
didn't even
pre
think
and
about that.
post workout. Yeah. Or you'd
Oh
have to
yeah.
come down and get me. Where's Gary? Go downstairs. Go get him.
Oh, it was great. It's funny because like in the beginning, you know, because we were starting off small, it wasn't such a big issue. But towards the point where we started to climb towards like 100 members, you know, it's like every night they'd come up and be like, oh, you know, my manager is yelling because you guys are dropping weights. It's too loud, you know, and it's funny, you know. And so like even like one time the manager, he's like, no, you come with me. You come downstairs and you go look. And he's just like, you know, it's not the sound that we get issues with. He's like, we could always turn the music up. He's just like, but when you guys drop the weights, it's a wooden rafter building, so all the dust falls down and then it gets into their food and
Right into
drink.
your food. Oh, no.
Well,
Exactly. So
that's a problem.
so it wasn't the noise, it was that they had to comp food because the dust was falling into like people's food. And I was like, well, you know, I was just like, I would love for you guys to tell the management company to kick me out because I was due to grow, you know, at the end of my 2-year mark or getting close to. And they pretty much were just done with me in the Mexican restaurant. They were like, you guys are horrible up there. So um but yeah, it was just like a regular occurrence, like even where the members got used of like the busboy coming up to the door and being like, Rudy, come over here. They're here to yell at
They're
you
here
again.
again.
I was
Yep.
like, oh no, here we go. I was like, all right, class, keep on working, and I'm gonna go take care of this. You know, it was
That's
definitely
so
interesting.
funny. That's so
Oh,
funny.
that and like, more second floor. And so a lot of the workouts require you running outside. So it's like running up and down stairs and in and out of the building. And so it was definitely a good learning experience in that first 2 years.
Yeah, I always found that hilarious. When I would drive past the CrossFit, I'd be like, "Where are all these people coming from?" Because they're nondescript. It's not like that big Bally sign or a big LA Fitness sign out front. They're usually pretty nondescript. And then I'd see all these people running around together, and I'm like, what's happening? And then I'd see that little CrossFit sign, but I don't use the stairs to your advantage.
Yeah, it's more work.
I always wondered if there are any complaints, and not necessarily CrossFit, but that CrossFit takes it to the next level. But I always wonder if there are any complaints when Jiu-Jitsu academies on the second floor, throwing, rolling, and all the other things. Never mind that.
I'm sure there is. I mean, and especially like on takedown.
Well, you just
days.
answered my
Right.
question. I mean, the dust going into
or
the
when the
food is
heavyweights are working
kind of
out.
an issue here. So I'm not sure if there's much of a difference between 200 pounds or adult man body floating on the floor and restaurant.
Oh, it's definitely interesting.
So you're looking to get out at that point, and is that what did it for you? Is that what got you into a bigger place, or did you wait even longer?
No, well, so we waited to the end of our 2-year lease because the landlord was just like, as long as I get my rent check, I don't care. You guys figure it out. And so he was one of those kind of landlords. And I was just like, hey, we're doing everything we can to mitigate the sound and the vibrations. Like we built platforms to like absorb the impact of the weights and crazy things like that. But it got to the point where 1,000 square feet was too small for us anyways. And so it was time to go.
So when you left that place, is that when you really became the gym that we know about, which was one of the biggest?
It was in the process of, and so like end up moving maybe less than a half mile away. This time around, I'm more aware of what I need, like a ground floor space. I need to make sure that my neighbors, are going to be okay with me making a ton of noise, that it's not going to reverberate around, and then also that they're going to be okay with us running in and out of the building. And so that learning experience of what to ask the landlord for and let him know what we're going to be doing, the second time around was a lot easier.
So you move in, and what happens next?
So we move out of our 1,000 square feet facility into about 3,600 square foot facility.
That's a huge jump.
Oh yeah, I was like, not only that is, the landlord is building out this space, and so he's just like, all right, what do you want? And I was like, all right, I was like, if I get to ask what I want, I want showers, and so he builds out some showers for us. They end up lofting a section of the building so that we could have more space in the square footage. And so it was, he's a great landlord in the beginning to deal with. He's just like, oh, what else do you need? I was like, oh, well, we plan on putting pull-up bars here. He's like, oh, I could have my guy weld them up for you. And I was like, awesome. And so he really wanted us in the building. It was a pretty vacant building. And so, so we got in at a good time.
So 35 from 1,000 to 3,500. That's a big change. Do you fill up the space?
So within a year and a half, we fill up the space again. So we grow from about 100 members to a little over 200, about 220. And,
so how many? For those who are not familiar with CrossFit, how many people can be in the class or working out at the same time in the facility? Because I think that's very different from Jiu-Jitsu, and majority of our audience were probably Jiu-Jitsu oriented. So talk about that a little bit before we get to filling up the space.
So when we were in our original space in 1,000 square feet, like 16 was kind of like a limit of where it was
1/6.
1/6.
1/6.
Yeah,
And
before I was getting.
And you have 100 members at that time.
Correct.
Well, now we're talking over 200, right? We're talking the new place.
No, this is the first space.
Still the first place. Okay.
Yeah. And so when we moved to the new space, I think like a big class is like 25, 30 people. and then a average class is about 12 people. So we have more space. We're able to deal with the flow a little bit better. But once again, once we start reaching that 220, 250-ish number, we start busting at the seams again. And, what do you do when you're busting at the seams? You take on more space.
So is this when you opened the second place, or did you move again?
No, so we in the second space, so we had about 3,600 square feet, and I talked to the landlord, say, hey, we're growing and we need more space. He can't get me consolidated space, so he's like, all right, I've got another corner of the building with a 5,000 square feet that you could add on to your current space, or you could move. And I was like, all right, well, I don't want to keep two separate spaces, so I just want to move into the 5,000 square foot space. And so that's what we signed the lease for, and he's just like, for now, I don't want to build out bathrooms and everything, so you could still use the old space while you're paying for the new space. And I was like, all right, I got 8,000 square feet, so I'm in. I was like, members have to just run through the hallway to use the bathroom and stuff, but I essentially have two spaces in one building that I'm going to ride out. So
how did that work out? When did you want to go?
Let's see. Well, well, there was a time. So before I take on that other 5,000 square feet, there was a time where I tried to open up a second facility because that's what I was crazy about doing. I figured that I wanted to grow this thing massive. So once about 6 months into opening the second space at 3,500 square feet, I took another lease in the West Loop to expand a second facility. And then I juggled that for about a year, a little over a year, until I realized that I couldn't split myself between two facilities. So I dropped the West Loop facility, sold it off to one of my coaches who was a good friend, and he took that over and opened up his own CrossFit. And then I focused on taking on that additional space after that additional 5,000 square feet. And so since it was indefinite how long he'd let us have both spaces, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to start building two different classes. So I'm going to run the major class in the 5,000 square feet. And then at the smaller space, I'm going to have like specialty classes like Olympic weightlifting or gymnastics classes. And then it got to us running a very successful program that we loved. It was a women's only program. And so we were able to run dual programs at the same time.
So at that point, how many students do you have?
So we opened up that second space with about 220. And then once we started growing, we topped out at about 400, right under 400 people.
400 students. How many?
Yeah.
How is that translated into staff and everything else that's happening? I imagine that you're not teaching all of this by yourself.
No, so that by that time, there's so many moving parts. With about 400 members, I have like a total staff of like 23 people, 6 full-timers, which includes like my friend who's running like the numbers. He's doing like all the finances. I have another friend who is running like all the marketing pieces, who have like a master's in marketing. So I have like people doing like legit jobs for their full-time gig for about 6 people, and then the rest of them are part-timers running classes.
So this is where we get into kind of the most interesting part of this whole story. So you're growing to this point. You are one. So how many other CrossFit gyms are in Chicago or 10-mile radius? Let's say, just to give everybody perspective what we are dealing with here.
In that first 5 years, it's starting to expand. When I opened up, there was only one other CrossFit in Chicago, and then it was like year by year, it was like exponentially growing. And so by the time that we're at this 5-year mark, there's probably about like maybe 10 to 15 in the city.
Okay. So you are nearby 400 students, you're 5,000 plus. So you're running both of the sides. So there's 8,000 square feet. You're running several different programs. You have 23 staff members. I mean, this is stacked. This is not a hobby, definitely. This is full-blown business. it's making money, you're making living, everything is awesome.
Or is it?
big long pause.
Big long pause.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is, this is where there's so many balls in the air, and it's just like trying to manage everything. So with the business, so this is kind of like the apex of things. So I've got like a successful gym with almost 400, about 400 members. I've got a staff that's running a lot of the moving pieces, so I'm not running everything. On the coaching side, I've taken 2 athletes to the CrossFit Games, which is the pinnacle of CrossFit. It's like the Olympics of CrossFit. So I've coached 2 different athletes up to that point. I'm on weekends going around coaching for the CrossFit headquarters staff, coaching other coaches to learn how to coach. And so it's pretty much like, I think that is possibly the apex of what people would consider a successful business owner, or even anything in CrossFit. It was success in the business, success in coaching. I had a great staff, so overall everything was kind of at the apex of success.
And are you married at that point? Kids, family, any of that is in any of this at that time?
Yeah. So by that time, I had I had my oldest boy in 2011, and my baby girl was on the way. So
okay. So you're doing all of this, all of this, not half, not part, but all of this. And you have one already there, one on the way. Your wife thinks you are completely crazy, isn't she?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So what
Pretty
happens there?
much.
Because this is the pinnacle of the whole story here. Now we come into the for me at least, the most interesting point of the whole story. Because for a lot of people, success is defined by amount of students, by amount of cash that we take in, by square footage, and you have 1,000 by then. I mean, that's huge. You're not only there, but you have probably one of the most recognizable names, Chicago CrossFit. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. And then what happens?
Like I said earlier, more money, more problems, right? So this whole thing ends up to be this big, massive business that I'm trying to run, and with a second kid on the way, I'm just like, all right, I need to make more money, and so like we start looking at the business in a deeper sense, and even though that the business is growing, the expenses are growing too. So it's not like, because we had 400 members, it's not like, all right, I'm taking in 6 figures now. It was just, we had to hire on more staff for more people. The more people we had, the more equipment we needed, the more maintenance we needed. And so, the sections of the pie didn't change. The whole pie just grew bigger. And so everyone had the same size of slice as we went on through. And so, so that was kind of like where things started to, where I was starting to rationalize, like, where is this gonna where is this going, so.
And where does it go?
So let's see, at that point, landlord tells me that somebody wants to be in the space that we're in, and so he's just like, oh, I've got this other space for you. We're going to consolidate your space into 10,000 square feet. And I was just like, okay, yeah, sure, let's take on that space. Me personally, I have our second kid, and we start realizing that in our space in the city that we're running out of room, and we're going to go move out to the burbs and do that typical city thing, grow until we have 2 kids and move out to the suburbs.
Yep, that's what we did. As soon as that second one came along, it was like, all right, where are we going? We can't stay here on this busy street in this super tiny little place. We've got to go,
It's part
Yeah,
of
it's
the
pretty
script.
funny. I think if I had like 2 boys, maybe it would have been a little more manageable, but having a boy and a girl and then having to get separate toys, like the accumulation of stuff, it was exponential with a boy and a girl. So
But you're very, very accustomed to expanding. So
I know, right? Exactly. So what do you do when you run out of space? You get more space.
Get more space. Yep. Keep growing. Keep going.
Yeah. So we move out to the suburbs, and then that's where the commute starts to kill me slowly. So keep on commuting in, and then I'm like
Daily,
starting to realize
or
that
like what's
I'd
your
say,
routine?
pretty much 6 days out of the week I'm commuting. You know,
Is that, and are you still flying to other cities to coach other coaches at this point too?
by that time I'm starting to wind that down a bit.
Good. Okay.
So this is around 2005. So I'm starting to wind down doing that. It's I think once we started having kids, that started to slow all that down. The first year that my son was born, it was okay for me to travel a little bit more. Um, and then after that, it was just slowing that down. So I start commuting, and the born business stuff. I'm reading. I'm like, all right, I need to pull myself out of this business if I plan to sell it, which eventually was, I think was my goal. But regardless if I was going to sell it or not, I need to pull myself out of the business to create more time for myself, my family. So the business had to run without me. And so we start trying to have other people run the business and try to pull myself out of it as we go through.
So you accomplish this huge success. You slowly starting to pull yourself out of it. The commute 6 times a week doesn't work anymore. Huge time commitment and so on. You have trusted people, I assume, at that
Yeah,
point, and
definitely.
they are starting to take over the responsibility and functions of the business.
Correct.
What goes
And
wrong?
so I feel pretty comfortable with everything. I pull myself out of the business, and then we're going to try to
Completely, or
let
there was a
people.
partial pull? Let's get that.
So I would come in once to do like staff meetings and trainer education for a day, and then pretty much they're running the show from there.
Okay.
So we let this kind of go for a little bit, for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then as we go through closer of analyzing the business to possibly sell, I realized that it's not running as well as I thought it's running. Um, it was slowly starting to fall apart, and I chose, I don't know if I chose not to really dig deep enough into it, or if I just was so busy that I wasn't completely informed. But eventually I start to realize that the business is starting to fall apart, and so I start having to come back in to try to pick up the pieces and try to pick back up business.
Do you think this would be different if you actually stayed engaged versus pulling away? Because that's the pinnacle of the whole thing, right? Like you phasing out to do what you want to do, to have this ultimate success of having a business running on its own while you enjoying the fruit of the design and all the hard work you've done for 10 plus years, right? Do you think it would be different if you stayed on fully engaged and you're running the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you're just in the presence of things, you watch things, you see things, kind of you have a better gauge on the pulse of things and where things are going when you're there on a daily basis. We didn't have things as automated or as systematized as the business people like to say it as I thought it was. But I think as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I think there's a little more than just having a system. Like you've got intuition of when things need to change and when you need to upgrade, downgrade, and you make those decisions a lot faster when you're in the moment.
Do you think there was a one single point or one single event that made these things not so successful, or do you think it was a collaboration of things altogether?
Oh, it was definitely numerous things coming together. So it was the expansion of CrossFit. So like at this time, CrossFit's still continuing to boom. We end up having about 3 affiliates within a half mile from us. So the saturation of it is definitely contributing to losing members. Um, we as you lose members, you're like, all right, I still have this big 10,000 square foot facility that I need to pay, $18,000 a month on. And so I need to figure out how that's all going to work. So you start to balance some figures, and, you have to play around with like rate changes and things like that. And so it ended up to be just a big beast going out of control. So.
So a number of different things are happening at the same time. All this is kind of going in a different directions and in a less controlled environment. Why do you think you're losing members? I mean, sounds like you guys are doing everything very, very well, even though competition. I mean, often you hear competition is a healthy thing. Actually, it's not.
Yeah, there's definitely that saying that a rising tide raises all ships. So, I mean, the more facilities there are, the more notoriety there is. But with the thing with CrossFit is, as that popularity rose, it became a commodity. So when it becomes a commodity, people start to price shop, and so because there's no franchise model, people could charge whatever they want. So when a new place opened up, they'd be like, "All right, you could train as much as you want for $99." When it's like half the price of what everyone's charging for like a full term membership. And so a lot of people when they're starting off, they're like, "Oh, they see this cheaper rate, they're just going to go there and figure it out." And then the whole experience thing, this could have been somebody who has trained for 4 months out of their life, and they're like, all right, I'm going to run a CrossFit, and this is what we're going to do. And so then somebody gets injured with somebody who's inexperienced, and they're like, oh, CrossFit is horrible, this hurt me, where it's not that the physical CrossFit didn't hurt them, it's inexperienced trainers that hurt them. But now they have this negative connotation, so there's so many multi layers of what's going on.
Yeah, and you touch on something that's so interesting because that's one of the things that I try to relate to my instructors in jiu-jitsu is there's three things that new student does not want to experience when they come in for very first time. Gary's laughing because that's
I see that.
It's been hammered into my head over and over and over again.
No, but I'm curious how, if you agree with this or not, but, three things that new student does not want to experience very first time when they come in. And one is to get hurt, two, to get embarrassed, and three, to be wrong. And the trick behind that is that very likely, two out of those three, they will actually experience the first time. They will very likely be wrong, and they very likely will be embarrassed. The hurting part is a huge factor that kind of kills the deal altogether. But if you can manage and make them feel, in a sense, that even though they are wrong, they can learn new things. Even though might be embarrassed, that can be overcome because they didn't get hurt. I think that's what might bring them back and continue bringing them back as they explore this journey while they overcome all these obstacles. What are your thoughts on that?
I highly agree. I think, and I think that's like one of the big business things is you always have to put yourself in that perspective shoes of what it's like to come into a place and not know anything. For us, it could have been somebody just coming off the couch. I guess it's the same for jujitsu, but like, people come in, they don't know what a gi is. They don't, they're like, I don't know. Am I supposed to bring my own pajamas so I think there's a lot of confusion in the beginning, and we forget, the longer you're in the business, you forget what that initial confusion and shock is like. And so, keeping that as comfortable as possible and not letting them get embarrassed. I totally agree. I think those three things to focus on are great aspects to keep in mind.
So let's keep going with your story. So what happens? You come to this point where it's not sellable. There's a lot of stuff to fix. Do you fix it? Is it fixable?
So I go in and I'm just like, all right, I'm going to try and fix this. I'm going to spend some time of trying to fix this, try to get it at least manageable, and see if I can do it. And so end up coming back in, a good 6 days a week, and putting in some really long hours trying to fix everything. I'm trying to come up with a better system, and it starts working me to the bone where I'm just like, I'm tired and I can't do it anymore. There's only so many 12, 14-hour days you could take in a row before you're just like, this doesn't make sense anymore. So we're working through things, still things continue to happen. The landlord's like, all right, we're coming up on a rent increase. I'm like, a rent increase? I'm like, I'm barely making the rent as is, and you're going to come up with another $2,000 increase. And so there's just multiple things that are happening where it's just like, it's, the writing is on the wall.
Yeah. And your family's still growing at this point too, right?
Yeah. So have a third kid, and definitely it's starting to take its toll on me. Like I could work 12, 14-hour days if I was a single guy and I didn't, and I only had like my girlfriend or even or my spouse would probably understand at that time, but my 5, 3, and 1-year-old are not going to understand of why I'm not home.
So you make arguably the most difficult decision that any business owner or any entrepreneur can make.
Yep. And so I seek out some professional help. I see some lawyers. I see some people who are great with finances, and they're pretty much just telling me that there's no way that this is going to work out for you. And so come to the fact that I got to shut down the business. It's a tough pill to swallow, after 10 years. Some I grew from absolutely nothing, storing equipment down in my basement and starting off a gym into this big, massive thing, that it's time to sell everything off and try to get in and out of the building in a matter of, I think it was a matter of a week.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. For real? 1 week?
Yeah. So I've got about 1 week before the landlord is pretty much can lock me out. And so I have a week to sell off pretty much about $100,000 worth of equipment.
Do you still have, I'm sorry, do you still have students coming in at this point, or have you shut that part down?
So after I met with the lawyer, I pretty much send out a message to my students that, like, we're gonna have to close things down.
Okay. And was this within that same week, or was this before that?
This was like kicking off the beginning of the week.
So that's Monday, huh?
Yeah. So it's funny. It's like, no. So, I start seeing the lawyers around a little after Christmas. So around New Year's, this is all kind of going down, where it's just like, some people are in work, some people are out of work, and the lawyers are like, well, you need to get your stuff out of there in a week. And I was like, I can't move tonnage of stuff. And they're like, well, you're not going to be able to move it and then sell it. So you need to sell it and get everything that you can get out of there, because everything else, once the landlord locks his doors, essentially he can keep that stuff for as long as,
Right,
as long as this
right?
mitigation takes.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So how in the world do you sell all this?
Oh, so that was definitely a interesting thing. So the great thing about social media and Facebook is, I pretty much send out a message to the world that I'm selling off pretty much every piece of gear that we have. And it's insane. Within a matter of 3-4 days, I sell off pretty much about 70% of the equipment that we have.
Wow. Well,
I
good for you.
Yeah, I had people driving in from Iowa. I had people, there were people driving in with U-Hauls. Like, people were ready to make some deals and pick up stuff, which I was super glad with. I had some employees that stuck around to help me get rid of all that stuff and help manage this chaos. Like, it was insane. It was like a Black Friday sale. So it was just like, yeah, on a Saturday, I was like, all right, I'm going to open up the doors. I'm not going to hold anything. First come, first serve. And by the time that it's time to open up the doors, I've got like 30 people outside getting ready to buy stuff. It was insane. Like, opening the doors was like a Black Friday sale. Like, people came in knowing what they wanted. Yeah,
but that's a position that you want to be in. I mean, that's much better than the alternative, right?
Absolutely. But like, that's the great thing about social media is, it's like, so we had to come up with a price list, and it's essentially, everyone knows that I need to get out of there, and it's like a fire sale. So I'm pretty much pricing stuff to like 30 cents on a dollar. It's used equipment, which already brings it down to 50-60%, but I need to get rid of the stuff in a matter of days. And so, 30 cents on a dollar, people are going to jump at that like nobody's business.
For sure. So go back a couple days back. There's a last class that takes place, and I saw all the pictures and all the the things that at that time was taking place. Talk about that, because I think that is, as far as much selling off business probably was challenging operationally, I can only imagine how difficult it was to have the last class before everything closed down.
It was tough. Like, it was almost a good thing that things were moving too fast for me to realize. Like it,
Hmm.
it didn't let this thing set in so bad that there was so much panic, from the lawyers being like, there's no way that you can continue to run, to you need to get out of there in a week. There was not a whole lot of time for that to like really sit in. Um, and at that time, after coming back for a little over a year and working, multiple 12, 14-hour days, I was tired. And so between me being fatigued, beat up, um, emotionally scarred, you know, it was bittersweet. I'm
Oh,
glad of like all the members that were there, and letting me know what the place meant to them, as it wasn't just a gym. It was a place where, people bonded, and people came out of their shells, and people made some of their absolute best friends, if not like their husbands and wives. And so it was definitely an interesting day.
lots of tears.
Absolutely.
Wow. I cannot put myself in that position. Gary, what do you think? I mean, I don't even. I
Yeah,
don't know how
don't,
you.
because then I'm going to have to look for a job. No,
That's not quite what I meant, but
well,
because Gary has to spin in the other direction.
I got to make it about me somehow. I understand where he's coming from as far as like it all happened so fast, which would be because if you have time to sit and stew in it, I think that's really gonna, as emotional as it is, that's really gonna bring you down, right? Having not been a business owner, I don't know. I could say I feel for the person, and I understand, and I would do the same thing, but I don't know. I was never in that position, so I don't know if I would be able to give it up. Because I don't, for you, I'm not sure, but I think for a lot of people, and talking about what we talked about earlier, ego, that comes into play. Can you do it? Can you give it up without feeling like you failed? Or can you give it up and saying, you know what? I had these dreams, I got there, and it's not right for me, so I got to let it go. And I don't know which side of the coin I would be on for all of that. I really don't. So I look at it as something to be commended for, to be able to say, this isn't what I sought to achieve, even though it was huge, and it was always growing, and money was good and all that. And to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to listen to these other people, right? Because people might be saying, I built all this. What does this lawyer know, right? I'll get a different financial advisor who's gonna get me through this. I'll take out another loan. Thomas and I know these people who have done that stuff. And for someone to be able to say, you know what, no, now's the time, right? And I got to give it up. So I don't know if I'd be able to do that. So I really think that shows a lot of fortitude, where other people might think the opposite.
I think that's what makes this story so awesome, in my opinion. And again, we briefly talked about this a few minutes ago, but it's like for some, the success is the square footage, is the amount of students, is the dollar bills coming in, is the gold medals, is the trophy, is the amount of weight you lift, or whatever the case might be. And yet, I feel like for you, the definition of success was a peaceful life where you can enjoy what you love to do, because you still coach, you still heavily involved in personal training, you still help people, and yet you have all this time with your family now. You have kids and beautiful house in suburbs, and and life is good, right?
Yeah. And I think you have to be open with yourself about like what success is. It's very easy to be driven by, like people always put like, I want to earn six figures, or, they want to have X amount of students. But when you really break down what you really want in life, most people like, they're like, oh, I want 500 students. And then they're like, all right, what are you going to do with your time? You're like, oh, I'm going to spend more time with my family. And so it's not really like, it's kind of like the goal when we search goals for like people. It's funny that we come up with these things that aren't very tangible to what we really want in life.
Mhm.
Um, when it came to me looking at what I wanted in my life, is I wanted to spend some time with my family and have time with my kids while they were still young, because eventually they're going to all be in school and be in school for 5 to 8 hours or whatever it is. And so I don't want to miss that right now. And so for me to just really appreciate that and understand that, I could be busier later. It's funny, last time you asked me if I'd open up another business, and I kind of still laugh about that. I'm like, I actually said yes, and I actually think I would, but just not at this moment, because I want to spend my time with my kids now. When they're in school, then yeah, then I could spend more time and I could be a little more greedy with my time. Um, I just don't want to miss this moment right now because it's not going to come back, and I realized that with my first kid is, when I was knee deep in the business, is you don't get those beginning years back. You can't make up time. So, when it got to the point, like for me with the business, when I was writing in, I was just like, every Thursday I have to be out of here by 7:30 or by, 7 o'clock, so I can make it in time to at least, tuck my kid in and, read him a book or whatever. When it got to that point, I was just like, this is not what I wanted in life. And so I think you just have to be real with what you really want in life, because most people want to be rich so they could do nothing. But just go do nothing. Like, you don't need that money to do nothing. You don't need that for like what your goals are. It's funny on how it runs in a circle.
And I think on the flip side, I don't know many rich people who do nothing.
True. True. And I don't know many rich people that don't, they want to have less stress, but they're more stressed because they have more things to balance. But who knows? I'm not rich.
None of us are.
Like Puffy said, right?
More money, more problems.
Yeah, there's people confuse success with happiness too, I think. And I know for me, coming to a place of wanting to be, like you said, for me mostly it's family, and that's the true happiness, is being able to spend all the time that I have with them. It's 4 hours a day that I was spending in the car, roughly 3 to 4 hours a day, depending on traffic, that I was missing out. Right. Um, and it doesn't sound like much, but if you start calculating that out by the week, by the month, by the year, by the school things you miss, yeah, you get to see her dance, but it's on videotape. You weren't there. You didn't get to tell your kid you're gonna do great, or you did great after. And to me, that confusion about happiness and success really gets a lot of people bogged down, and they start making decisions that I don't think 5 years, 10 years later, they're going to regret it. And I'm glad I stopped doing what I was doing, so I could focus more on family. So
Yeah, I think that's pretty true and pretty deep. Confusing success and happiness. Um, I guess in a point, I guess you could be successful and not happy, and I guess a lot of people are there. But I think you just have to respect what's more important for you. And I think for me, my happiness and my family's happiness is more important than what people would define as successful. If I'm happy and my family's happy, I think that's success in itself. So
for sure, priorities too, right? What's your
Priorities.
priority? Yeah, is it making the coin? Some people, their priority is to be working 12, 14-hour days all the time. But then for others, you get to a point where you realize, nah, I need to cut this back, and because my true priority is my family, or even yourself if you don't have one. Taking time for yourself to grow as a person, things like that. So
Regrets, Julie, Rudy?
regrets? No, I don't have any regrets. I enjoyed those moments, the ups, the downs. I'm not a big regret person. I don't think I have many regrets. I'm definitely disappointed that I did not train with Master Carlson when he asked me back in the day.
I still can't believe that you were
That
there.
one is a rough kick. That one was a rough kick where I'm at now, understanding what I missed out on then. But other than that, like all my CrossFit experiences, um, it's like a 10-year MBA. I feel like I learned a lot about business, even though I didn't sign up for the program. I got self-enrolled in a 10-year MBA program, understanding the life cycle of a business, and so I don't regret it. It was a good experience.
Do you still keep in touch with your clients, with your students?
I do. I keep in touch with a lot of people. I mean, I made some of my best friends at that time. I mean, there were people, I mean, half of my wedding was probably either staff or like people from the gym. And so it's just great people, you know. And so spent,
Isn't it
I
interesting
mean,
how that works
years.
out? Isn't it interesting how that works out? I mean, it's the same thing for me. I don't know many people outside of jiu-jitsu. Like it's just that circle that you build, whatever discipline, whatever activity you do, but you build these relationships, and they tend to stick around for a very, very long time.
Oh, absolutely. It's that bond.
What
Yeah,
was
you
the best?
do.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. All right, I'm gonna go. I think that you spend this time, so you're getting, because like you said, you get to know these people on an emotional level, right? You're not just there. You're not telling them what weights to lift and how fast and how many times. You dug deeper.
Oh, he does
So
tell
you-
them. I know
Well,
he
yeah.
yells at people. He yells at people. He does tell them how fast to lift.
Yeah.
That's called encouragement. Encouragement.
Sure. But you know, it's the same way with jiu-jitsu. You bond with people in ways you probably never thought you would, right? Rolling around in your pajamas. And those are lifelong friendships that you make over something that you share. You know, I have friends now that we're completely opposite on 90% of life, but that 10% we share, we can understand each other, you know, and we don't have to agree on everything to be friends and have a great relationship. So I think that when you dedicate yourself to stuff, no matter what it is, yeah, you're going to build bonds that are going to last a lifetime. Whether you did it at, you know, right out of the Marine Corps, or if you do it when you're old and gray like Thomas.
Speechless. Rudy, before we wrap up, what was the best part behind your entire experience at Chicago CrossFit?
The people. I love the relationships that I've made with people. You know, whether they were there for a handful of months or some people are there for, you know, 8 years. You know, it's the relationships that we built have been phenomenal. And I do consider them all my friends. So I mean, it was just great. It was great to be a part of their lives. You know, whether amount of time it was.
What an amazing story, Gary. What do you think? I mean, this is great.
Yeah, it's 10 years of somebody's life that we get to experience and hear about and learn, and see how it probably affects ourselves. I want to know when Rudy is getting back on the mat with us here, right? I've never rolled with him. I've heard good things though.
Rudy's one scary guy.
It's fun. It's playful. We just smile and we roll. You
That's
know.
right.
Isn't it? Jiu-jitsu is like the only sport where you come in, you know you will get beat up, you leave with a smile on your face, and you still come back.
And sometimes it's even better when you get beat up. You're like, wow, that was awesome. I got
know.
it handed to me.
Yeah, that's usually how I feel about it. So, did we lose our friend? Oh, there he is. Perfect. All right. Little hiccup.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up. I think this is a great story. Rudy, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing and really opening it up. Not a lot of people open up to the level that you did, and we truly appreciate this. I know a lot of listeners will actually appreciate this true story. Again, success is not always defined by these things that we might think they are. So this is truly great. How people can find you? Where can they find you?
Just on Instagram. It's Rude713. I'm always doing some interesting, weird things, playing around with fitness. I always use my body as a lab, and skateboarding.
We didn't even talk about that. Yeah.
We didn't. Yeah. So picking back up skateboarding at 40, almost 43. It's only been 20 years. Whatever. 20,
Yeah,
actually 30. Sorry, 30 years.
30. Nice. And but you're already doing kick flips and ollies and all sorts of stuff, man. I've seen the video.
Getting there.
I tell you, like your Instagram, like I watch your Instagram so often. It's on the top of my thing. It from handstands to dips to other things. I don't even know what you do. And now skateboarding, highly entertaining. Highly entertaining. Make sure you guys follow it.
It's always a good time. I'm working on easing into my flexibility in my 40s, and so we're gonna shoot for the splits in a year.
Oh boy.
Oh boy is right.
Good luck.
All right,
you guys
Rudy.
don't want in on that?
No, you're
Gary.
that one's all
Well,
you.
I'll film. How's that?
Always sitting on the sidelines.
Oh, that's good.
Rudy, thanks for sharing this story. Hope we talk to you soon again. And Gary?
Thanks for joining us. I hope you had a good time. Come back. We'll talk more about skateboarding. And by then, we'll be back on the mats so we can talk about that too.
Awesome. Thank you guys. It was a great time. I'm glad I was able to share, and you guys are great.
Yeah, and hopefully we won't have to re-record this. I think we got it this time.
That's great. I was trying to cut this off before it gets.
No. I'm gonna that nugget's sticking with me. I'm gonna use it every chance I get. So thanks
Rudy,
again. I appreciate
Rudy,
it.
thank you. Take care.
Thank you guys.
Take care. Peace, man. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to ROL Radio. Check out all future episodes on our website and all major podcast platforms. Take care.